So how does a country go from a totally failed post-Soviet state to, get this, one of the freest economies on Earth, and do it in just over a decade? It sounds impossible, right? Well, today we're diving into the absolutely incredible and super radical story of Georgia's economic turnaround. To really get a feel for this, you have to imagine it. Let's go back to Tbilisi, Georgia's capital, around 2005. I mean, it was a pretty grim scene. Think constant power outages, crumbling roads, just a city stuck in this gray Soviet past. Now, flash forward just 12 years. That same city is buzzing. It's lit up like Paris, with streets that are, believe it or not, better than some you'd find in the US. The change is, well, it's literally night and day. So yeah, the big question is, how on earth did this happen? This wasn't some slow, gradual change. Nope. This was a full-blown revolution in how a country is run. And that's the story we're getting into.
Okay, so before we talk about the solution, we've got to understand the problem. And believe me, Georgia was in bad shape. Years and years of corruption and just stagnation had pushed the country right to the breaking point. So after breaking away from the Soviet Union in '91, things didn't magically get better. In fact, Georgia stumbled into a decade of chaos. By 2003, people were just fed up. That's when the peaceful Rose Revolution happened, sweeping a whole new generation into power, led by this young, charismatic, Western-educated guy named Mikhail Saakashvili. But this wasn't just a political shuffle. Behind the scenes, you had these local economists, guys like Payada Shashalidze and Gia Jangieri, who were pushing for something truly radical. They were arguing for a complete economic overhaul, a full-on embrace of free market ideas. You could say they were the intellectual brains behind what was about to happen. Now, President Saakashvili, he was a politician, right? Not an economist. He knew he needed someone to actually do this stuff, to execute this wild vision. He needed a turnaround artist. And the guy he found, well, let's just say he was not who you'd expect. Enter Kaka Bendukidze. This man was, wow, just larger than life in every possible way. We're talking about a giant of a man, around 350 pounds, a biologist who'd become a mega-successful entrepreneur in Russia. And here's the kicker. He was a self-described fanatical libertarian. Yeah, definitely not your typical government minister. And this guy was not shy about his ambitions. This wasn't some plan for a few tweaks here and there. No way. Bendukidze came right out and said his mission was to make Georgia the most economically free country on the planet. Freer than the United States. I mean, to most people, he sounded completely nuts, but he was dead serious. His strategy? It was as simple as it was radical. You can boil it all down to three things. 1, shrink the government. 2, sell off everything the state owns. And 3, just slash all the red tape and regulations. Simple to say, but brutal to actually do. And this plan led to what you can only call economic shock therapy. These weren't gentle suggestions. They were fast, sweeping, painful changes designed to completely remake the country from the ground up. So, shrinking the government, Bendukidze basically took a sledgehammer to the bureaucracy. Just by merging 2 big ministries, almost 50,000 government employees were cut from the payroll. Poof, gone. Entire departments that were seen as useless were just eliminated overnight. But maybe the most legendary move was on corruption. The entire traffic police force, all 30,000 of them who were notorious for shaking people down for bribes, were fired. Every single one, in a single day. For a little while, Georgia had no traffic cops at all, and as the joke went at the time, the crime rate actually went down. Next up, deregulation. The old post-Soviet tax system was a joke, a mess of 22 different super complex taxes. So they just scrapped the whole thing. In its place, a simple system with just 6 taxes, including a flat income tax. The whole point was to make it easy for people to pay their taxes and attractive for businesses to invest. And then came the privatization spree. Bendukidze's whole philosophy was captured in this one famous, defiant line. Everything was for sale except Georgia's honor. Think about that. State-owned factories, hotels, hospitals. If the government owned it, it was going up for sale. But how they did it was just as important as what they did. See, in other post-Soviet countries, state assets were basically handed over to political buddies in shady deals. Not in Georgia.
Here, they held public, transparent auctions. The highest bidder won, period. Didn't matter if they were Georgian or from somewhere else. It was a direct attack on that whole culture of corrupt insider deals. So, okay, the reforms were fast, they were deep, they were radical, but did they actually work? Let's look at the results and the really interesting paradox that came out of all this. Well, by one key measure, the success was absolutely staggering. In 2004, Georgia was ranked 56th in the world for economic freedom. By 2017, it had jumped all the way to 8th place. 8th! That's ahead of the United States. That seemingly crazy goal Bendukizi said, he actually did it. And this wasn't just some number on a chart. These reforms had a real, tangible impact on people's lives. Even by conservative estimates, income per person is about 40% higher than it would have been without the changes. Infant mortality is down 30%. Employment is up. These are real results. But this leads to a really important question, one that Georgian students would often ask. If our country is so free, why are we still so poor? And you know what? That is a fantastic, crucial question. It really gets to the heart of the challenge. Answering that question is really the key to understanding the whole story. The truth is, creating wealth is a much, much slower process than creating freedom. You have to remember, Georgia is overcoming a massive historical disadvantage. We're talking about more than 200 years of being a client state for Russia and then the Soviet Union. Plus, they have a giant, hostile neighbor that literally invaded them in 2008. But most importantly, all this economic freedom is brand new. Building real, widespread wealth, that takes decades. It's all about that slow, steady power of compounding growth. And to protect this progress, to make sure it sticks, Georgia did something really remarkable. They passed a law on economic freedom. It's basically written into their constitution now. And it limits the government's ability to spend too much, get into debt, or raise taxes without a public vote. It's their attempt to lock in these reforms for good. The man behind all this, the architect of this incredible transformation, Kaka Bendukidze, he sadly passed away in 2014. But his legacy, you see it everywhere in the new Georgia. It's not uncommon during a traditional Georgian feast called a supra for a toast to be raised to the man who, against all odds, set his country on a totally new course. And that really leaves us with this final thought. Georgia's story is powerful proof that huge, radical change is actually possible, even when things look hopeless. The ultimate question it leaves us with is this: can a nation's commitment to freedom, in the long run, truly outpace its deep, painful history of oppression? It's a question Georgia is still answering every day.